Azael had just arrived back in the cockpit with Gabel. On the floor in front of them, they saw Asheen patching up some cuts and bruises on her, while an already patched-up Lucan was looking with sparkling golden eyes upon a screen.
"What have you done, you idiots?"
Azael yelled as she sat Gabel down. Asheen, startled by the sudden yelling, got to her feet.
It was hurt, and the dog and I couldn't keep it alive. I chose to save its life, so I gave it the suit,"
the assistant said, at first hesitant, and then simply deciding to own up to her decision.
"You can't just give an RF suit to a lower-ranking intelligent sentient! You are an absolute amateur, and I will have this put forward with the Council. I will make sure you and Lucan both get to study alien single-cell organisms for the rest of your lifespans,"
Azael said, nearly frothing at the mouth. Well, if her biology would allow for that. "You will do no such thing," Lucan stated from the back of the room, still facing the holographic display that seemed to show a live feed of some sort. This comment, and the way Lucan spoke, got both Asheen's and Azael's attention.
"Oh, I will, because you just put us at risk with a decision that was approved by nobody!"
"We were at risk of death, you daft order-following drone!" Lucan said with a fervor, as if he didn't protest himself against this not long ago. He slammed his fist on the console, and then turned, the glint in his golden eyes accompanied by a wide smile, which for Angelons is quite literally and unnervingly from short pointy ear to short pointy ear, showing off their teeth in their entirety. "That simpleton has just clued us in on the proper usage of the archaic Gen 1 RF suit. The suit is connected with the ship's network to record during use and provide a live feed. I have watched its fights, and oh, how glad I am that I did," Lucan said, clasping his palms together, the 4 digits on each hand crossing between each other. Azael got quiet for a second as she listened to Lucan, his behavior bordering on unhinged, cutting her anger slightly short.
What are you talking about? Asheen, help Gabel with his wounds," Azael said as she began approaching Lucan, but being wary of him. Lucan's wide smile went to a near-neutral expression, showing just a small smirk as his digits danced across the console, rewinding the video file, pausing at the very beginning. He turned the volume up slightly, and then simply let the figurative tape roll, making the viewing window bigger and stepping aside. Azael, and eventually Asheen and Gabel, too got to witness their primitive allies' rampage. Its yelling, the way the suit apparently reacted to its words, and how it used the suit's features, how it changed the way the suit's features worked. How is it doing that? How is the suit even understanding it? We do not have any other language installed in these besides our own. Hell, most Gen 1s still use older versions of our language. They are basically ancient," Azael said as she kept watching.
Asheen had the suit integrated with it. When it got shot, the kinetic round pierced its heart. Now the suit's core itself is its heart. Once vitals were stable, the suit plunged conductive nanofilaments to connect and merge into its nervous system. It is now an extension of it, Lucan said as he pulled aside the video to reveal another window, which showed biometrics of the human and the suit, which worked in tandem with it. A digital X-ray image of the creature showed the suit had rooted in through its entire body, the core of it sitting in its chest with synthetic veins connecting to the main blood valves that would connect to a heart usually. Azael turned to face Asheen, who just finished disinfecting and wrapping up Gabel's stump.
You integrated the suit into it? It was to save his life!
Asheen yelled back, exasperated.
You could have just had it wear it for life support!
The pilot screeched back, nearly headbutting Asheen due to how close she got into her face.
It would have been too slow, you dimwit! If you had any idea of how the Gen 1s work, is that when initiating integration upon boot up, it will start life support during the integration process. Otherwise, it boots up systems in a different order and it processes slower. A second could have meant its death,
the assistant explained, annoyed. In the end, I have come to be glad about Asheen's choice. Because of that, I have just witnessed the forgotten potential of the Gen 1 suit. No wonder older datapads were speaking of its potential so highly, due to forgetting the true knowledge we had on it and our kind's tendency to look down upon the smarts of others and also our predecessors. We are now the fools who have become the laughingstock out of all of our generations, Lucan stated with a humbled tone, as well as a boiling frustration. So you're saying that dusty old armor is better than our current Gen 2s? Puh, like hell it is, Azael said, crossing her arms. Lucan looked at her with an unimpressed expression, as he then glanced up at the video from the Xeno's point of view, and he grinned once more. You remember how our Gen 2's whole-body shields can withstand about 5 to 6 consecutive rail rifle shots before being disabled and needing to recharge? Yes, it was one of our major improvements compared to the Gen 1's whole-body shields, which would withstand about 2, and then would let rounds pass through it. The shield itself wouldn't shut down, but it was thinner than our kind's first layer of skin, so therefore useless if it doesn't do its job, Azael said confidently. She didn't know an extensive amount about the Gen 1 suits, but she knew what the military taught her, and that is the improvements the Gen 2 suits have over their predecessor. Who actually said the Gen 1 had full-body shields? Lucan said with a snort and a chuckle. One of the complaints of newer generations about the Gen 1 suits was that the shield it generated was usually initiated as a flat surface shield, almost like a wall that moved with you. But soldiers complained of the time it took them to morph it into the shape they wanted, which usually was a dome that they could wrap over themselves, Lucan stated in a satisfied tone. Due to those complaints, code was written into the suits to allow for the shield to simply cover the body and morph with it. The xenobiologist then pointed at the recording, which now showcased William as he just made his arm-mounted shield. Azael's eyes widened as she witnessed the Xeno in the suit block over 9 rail rifle shots, and then deflecting an overcharged one, the shield's energy surface not wavering or weakening once. Huh? Azael uttered in confusion. Lucan simply laughed like he had just heard the best joke in the whole universe. The reason the shield was failing was because it wasn't meant to be flexible and to bend with the user's movements. It was made to be a constant shape and deformed when needed, Lucan said as he sucked on his teeth. I welcome you 3, as you are now part of the side of our race that knows how truly stupid we are. All I told you just now, I finally figured out after watching an untrained creature use our tech. Azael and Gabel simply stared on, stunned, now watching the native chop, with a short, sharp weapon, into the face of the Daemar that melted his gun to bits in a final attempt to kill the silvery armored creature. Ha! Oh, this'll be fun to look into, Asheen said as she watched in awe at the recording. Soon enough, the recorded video ended, and a prompt on the side of the screen announced it returning to the live feed. William was chasing down the last demon. It tried to employ smoke screens, but the tracking intent of the night made the suit activate thermal vision, his eyes always affixed on his running target. The suit locked an outline on it, and using that, along with trajectory data, it also correctly highlighted its footprints, which William was looking for if he lost sight of his fiendish enemy. Come back, you spineless cur! You disgrace your Dark Lord, and show your kind's cowardly nature! Take thine death by God's wrath, and show some bravery before your demise! This thing's been moving so much, how the hell is it not tired yet? Gabel said as he watched William's chase. It's kind of our endurance hunters. They aren't fast, nor impossibly strong, but they have evolved with quite a bit of endurance. We had observed some hunters from a different region. They had struck a creature using a primitive shafted projectile, an herbivore of sorts, and they let it run off. They simply tracked it, using the trail of blood and keeping an eye on it from a distance. Then they just walked it to exhaustion and killed it. As long as its intent is on getting you, it eventually will, even if it has to slow down to conserve energy. Huh, funny. It is almost like death, isn't it? No matter where you run from it, it will just come after you, Asheen said with a chuckle, as she kept her gaze glued to the screen. It is the perfect creature for a long-distance marching infantry. If vehicles wouldn't be at our disposal, and we had to run from one of those, we'd be screwed, Azael stated matter-of-fact-like, her hands balling up in tight fists from frustration at this realization, that on equal footing, this creature might be stronger. William's chase began to come to an end as he caught up to the Daemar captain. He was getting into a ship, foul-looking thing. While the Angelon Empire's ships had a more oval or sphere-like design, the Daemar Union used more triangular or arrow-tip-like designs for their ships. The knight had charged towards the ship as it began roaring to life, its engine lighting up. Oh, I cannot wait to witness this. What will you do now, Primitive? Show me. Show me what you will come up with, Lucan said as he seemed to then hold his breath, his expectations rising. William looked a bit perplexed as the ship was about to take off. You took refuge inside the innards of this metal beast? 'Tis a dragon? The knight made his sword form once more in his hand, and with both hands he thrusted the tip of the blade against the ship's hull, and after a second thrust it pierced through. As the ship began lifting more, William hung from his blade with a grunt of effort. He looked down at the ground that he was now being lifted away from. In his offhand he made a dagger form, which he then jammed into the ship's hull, along the longsword's blade. The knight then grunted and growled, as he began attempting to widen the gap he made. Foul beast, ye stand not a chance! Cease your ascension to the skies, and spit out your master, lest I am forced to tear apart your belly, and crawl through thine innards, to rip out your heart and take him by force! When the metal behemoth didn't stop or reply in any way, the knight simply began to pry its hull apart. He pulled more and more, with little progress, but ceaseless, each little bend in the metal seemingly encouraging him to push himself. God wills it! I obey! God wills it! I obey! Initiating adrenal gland stimulation, the suit coldly stated into William's ear, as well as back on the ship through the live feed. Glands? Lucan and Asheen yelled out in a chorus of surprise, both of them approaching the console and going over the X-ray simulation of William's insides. Oh my! Yes! It is true! It has two fucking adrenal glands! Asheen said, ecstatic at this discovery, her expression turning a lighter blue due to the flustered awe. Ha! Oh, I fucking love this thing already! So much to study, so many experiments come to mind, Lucan said as he looked back at the live feed after examining the X-ray. The hull got bent more and more, enough for William to get his hands in there, his weapons retracting into his armor. He pulled bare-handed as he now yelled at the top of his lungs, the strain being incredible on him. He could feel his muscles burn as he took deep breaths of air and just kept pulling. The metal cried and whined as it got forced to deform. God wills it! Deus Vult! He yelled as he ripped the metal apart even more, just enough to crawl through. He got inside the hull's walls. He could short-circuit the whole ship if he knew how... Gabel began saying, only to then facepalm while seeing the native start to rip through the wires and pipes impeding his path. With 2 hand axes at the ready, William began to rip through the beast's guts, sparks flying every and each way. Inside the Daymar ship's cockpit, the squad captain piloted the ship alone, as he just managed to get on comms. Starhopper D733, do you copy? This is Captain Tessex of the Recon Group D733/092. I am returning after failing to neutralize an Angelon science vessel. They have sent something after us. It is wearing one of their older modeled suits, but it isn't an Angelon. It is a native of Plan. Noises of loud, echoing pounding, and the cry of metal bending echoed from behind the cockpit. Just as quickly an alarm blared, showing that ship pressure is leaking and the hull has been compromised. D733/092. We copy you. What have the Angelon research crew employed? Over. A voice replied back through the comms, just as another dull and loud sound of impact rung like a bell from the ship's insides. The captain silently stared back in disbelief, at the closed cockpit door, in shock. He quickly snapped out of it when another louder impact resounded through his control chamber. Tessex quickly turned back to the comms. It's inside of the ship! Oh no! Almighty Creator! But please, help me! Put one of my soldiers' head on a spike! It is relentless! Please, have troops ready at the hangar, and move closer to the planet! The captain pleaded, desperate. Negative 092. If it is an ally of the Angelons, we can't compromise our position. We are not exiting Cloak or approaching until we are certain that you aren't being tracked. Over. The voice over the comms stated plainly and coldly, as another boom resounded inside the ship.
I can't! I'm stuck in the cockpit, you imbecile! I am trapped!
Tessex yelled, with his voice quivering. The comms were silent for a bit too long for comfort, until they sparked up to life again. We thank you for your service, and we will inform your family of your passing. That was the last thing Tessex heard, before the communication line was ended by the other side. Silence akin to that of a tomb reigned supreme. No more distant sounds of metal wailing, or echoes of impact either. Tessex continued navigating the ship, up until he felt his long spine lock up in terror. Despite the silence, he just had a most horrendous feeling. He glanced back at the closed twin sliding doors, and his void-like eyes widened as he saw their lips quaver as they began to be pried apart, a dim blue light shining through the widening gap, as silvery digits crept through it as well. I know you are in here, demon! Death cometh in my wake to claim thine wretched soul! William shouted from the other side of the door as if possessed. Tessex, quivering in sheer terror, took out a small datapad and tapped on it until he came to a picture of his significant other and his 6 children. Pulling his kinetic pistol from his holster, he shook with fear as he could hear the doors open ever so slowly.
I am sorry, dear kids. I love you. Papa will miss you,
Tessex said, as tears dripped from his black eyes while lifting his pistol. When William managed to loudly pry the door, a second loud bang echoed from the sound of the doors being slammed open, and right after, a dull thud of impact on the floor followed.